Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and you know what? I feel like today was actually a pretty good day for gamers, or at least for most part. You know, it kind of feels like there's been a lot of negative news these past few months, so, I'm always happy when we get days like today where we as gamers can actually rejoice and celebrate what brings us all together in the first place, and that's great games. And we definitely got one of those today, but one of the big talking points right now is the fact that Sony dropped a major upgrade, and this has already been making waves online. And speaking of waves, it is Pokemon Day, and they did exactly what we were all hoping for. They revealed Generation 10, but with an unexpected twist. So stick around because we got a lot to get into, but first, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with a really cool announcement for us Rareware fans. I mean, for a lot of us that grew up in the 90s, Rare at the time was viewed as one of, if not the absolute best developer of that time period. I mean, I know they played a huge role for my childhood with games like Banjo-Kazooie, there was Conker, there was Perfect Dark, Diddy Kong Racing, Donkey Kong Country, and that's the thing about Rareware. They had so many great games during that era. And well, apparently, they just partnered up with Evercade. They are launching a new Rare Super Pocket this June, and it comes with a Rareware cartridge that includes 14 different games, including fan favorites like Banjo-Kazooie, Battletoads, Jetpack, and even Conker's Pocket Tell. Now, I also really like the design of this device, but I think my only thing is that I would have liked to have seen more heavy hitters. I mean, yeah, there's Banjo-Kazooie, that's great, but what about Banjo-Tooie or even Conker's Bad Fur Day? You know, they could have also included some games like Killer Instinct as one such example, so I don't know. I am a huge Rare fan, and I like that they're doing this, but I feel like this package could have gone a little bit deeper and could have appealed to even more people. Now, to be fair, maybe they couldn't include more heavy hitters because there's a constraint with these cartridges. I'm not exactly sure, but if you are interested, pre-orders are rolling out now, and it's like $60, so it's actually very affordable, and it could be nice for your collection if you like Rare. Now, speaking of handhelds, unfortunately, the Steam Deck is raising its price specifically in Japan. So this is not a worldwide increase, or at least yet, but it is our first real sign that Valve is looking at the prices and what they need to do with the AI boom looming and the rising prices of things like DRAM. Keep in mind that just yesterday, AYN announced a price hike for the popular AYN Thor, and they were very forthcoming about the details. Their supplier told them that prices are expected to continue to rise for both storage and for RAM. So yeah, everybody is currently dealing with this issue, and especially for these smaller hardware companies. It's going to hit them harder because unlike Nintendo and PlayStation, they weren't able to secure a year's worth of supply. They more so order by demand, and that means price will impact them faster. So Valve, they are in that boat, and if they're raising price in Japan, then yeah, there's a fairly good chance that other regions could follow as the year progresses. So my suggestion is that if you want the Steam Deck OLED, which came back in stock today, then you might want to consider purchasing it before its inevitable price hike. Of course, though, this is also a bad sign for the eventual Steam machine, and that really is just such a travesty. I was actually interested in the Steam machine when they first announced it, but that was with the idea that it could come out at an affordable price tag, but unfortunately, the AI boom has shifted the market in a less than ideal way. Oh, and we got another update for the Bluepoint closure. I mean, I still believe this is one of the worst closures of all time, and especially after we caught wind of some of the alleged pitches that they made after Sony canceled their live service God of War project. Allegedly, they pitched a Jak and Daxter remake, a Resistance remake, an updated PS5 version for Shadow of the Colossus. There was even a Ghost of Tsushima spinoff, and the last one that fans are absolutely furious about is a Bloodborne remake. I mean, fans have been begging for a Bloodborne update, any kind of update, for years and years, and I mean, if this is true, that Sony rejected a remake out of all things, then yeah, that would be a devastating blow for the community. Well, the bad news here is that according to Jason Schreier, it is true that Bluepoint pitched a Bloodborne remake last year, but apparently Sony didn't necessarily reject it because they didn't like the idea, but instead, it's because From Software doesn't like the idea. In his article, he wrote that in early 2025, when Bluepoint again pitched the idea of Bloodborne Remake, the studio was told that the numbers made sense, but From Software didn't want it to happen, according to people familiar with the process. And this is actually not the first time that we've heard something like this. There have been chatters for a long time that because Miyazaki likes Bloodborne just so much that he doesn't want anybody else to touch it. So, I mean, maybe he'll revisit it at some point, but for now, Sony is steering clear of doing anything with Bloodborne because of From Software. So not only does this tear down the idea of a Bloodborne remake, but I think ultimately this also kind of destroys any rumor that Sony will even apply a 60 FPS update until From Software is willing to do it themselves, which really is too bad because that might never happen. Here's my thing though, even though Bluepoint wasn't given the green light for Bloodborne, I still find it criminal that Sony allegedly rejected games like Jak and Daxter as one such example. I mean, that feels like such an obvious choice for a remake, so it's sad if they truly passed on that being a thing as well. Now, Jason Schreier did, however, name drop a Ghost of Tsushima spinoff. Apparently, it was true that they pitched that game as well, but of course, that didn't happen either. So, I don't know. I just don't understand how Sony fumbled an acquisition like Bluepoint. On paper, they could have easily made Sony a lot of money by simply reviving Sony's endless amount of IP that dates all the way back to the original PlayStation. It's just unbelievable to me that they couldn't find something to work on. And, that's why I feel like even if they've struggled these past few years, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me that they would go out and shut them down. Surely they could find something for them to work on. All right, now let's just go and get into the good news, though, and this really starts off with Resident Evil Requiem. It is out now, and the hype is absolutely real. Not only were physical pre-orders sold out across all online retailers in the United States, but on top of that, it's already debuted with 320,000 concurrent players on Steam, which makes it the highest concurrent count for any Resident Evil title, and really by a long shot. Resident Evil 4 Remake, as one such example, topped out at 168,000 concurrent players. So, I mean, we're talking about nearly double that, which is an absolute crazy jump game over game. But here's the thing that I really want to talk about. I mentioned this in yesterday's video, but I was kind of skeptical about it at the time, but there was speculation going around about PSSR 2.0 being a thing for Resident Evil 9. Now, I was skeptical because it kind of seems strange to me that Sony would allow somebody like Digital Foundry to do a review of Resident Evil 9 without singing the praises for PSSR 2.0. But apparently, Sony did exactly that. They waited until the launch of Resident Evil 9 to confirm that yes, PSSR 2.0 is included and Resident Evil Requiem is the first game to debut its update. And that is exactly why it is such a big upgrade compared to other console versions. The PS5 Pro is the best way to play on consoles, and really by a fairly large margin at that. Now, Digital Foundry dropped a new video today, and they talked about how it compares to some of the modern PC AI upscalers, and it's actually very comparable. From what I gather, DLSS 4.5 is still the cream of the crop, but PSSR 2.0 is very comparable to FSR 4, and actually better in some situations, especially on a big screen where PSSR 2.0 shines. Now, that's not all, though, because Sony announced that PSSR 2.0 will drop in March, and apparently this will impact all existing PS5 Pro games. You can go to its system settings and toggle on Enhance PSSR image quality, and if everything works properly, and admittedly there is still an if with that, but if it does, then it will improve whichever PS5 Pro game that you want to play. And this could be massive for games like Silent Hill F, Metal Gear Solid Delta, and other troubled PSSR games. So as an owner of the PS5 Pro, I'm actually very excited about this upgrade. And by all means, apparently a lot of other people are as well. The PS5 Pro has actually been selling out on PlayStation Direct since this announcement. I mean, again, you have to kind of keep in mind that the PlayStation 6 may have gotten delayed by multiple years. So the PS5 Pro could actually be the lead platform for a very long time. And that will also include for future games like Grand Theft Auto 6. So really, this is big news from Sony, and it kind of seems like the PS5 Pro is finally worth it, or at least based on Resident Evil 9. Admittedly, we do need to see how this impacts other games as well. Now, one more thing before we go, though, because we got a new Pokemon Presents today, which I'm not going to talk about every game that they showcased. It was a 20-plus minute event, and really most of it I'd say is not all that interesting. I mean, they revealed some updates for games like Pokemon Unite, there was Pokemon Cafe, and Pokemon Go, all their mobile games, and, if you like those, then definitely go check it out. But the four big games that they talked about was Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. It will launch on the Switch 2 in March as a part of their GameCube lineup. They also announced that Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green will include Pokemon Home at a later date, which I think that alone will get a lot of people to buy into those games. Now, they also announced that Pokemon Champions will launch in April and at a later date for mobile devices. Now, that game actually does have a lot of potential to blow up in popularity when it releases. And then lastly, the game that everybody was waiting for, Pokemon Winds and Waves. Yes, the leaks were true, and it actually looks really good. I mean, I understand the bar might have been low because of their output during the Switch 1 era, but this really is kind of the evolution that a lot of fans have been waiting for. The scenery looks fantastic, and especially when it comes to the water. I mean, I know there's always that infamous review from IGN years and years ago, there's too much water, but in this case, the water in Winds and Waves might actually be a true system seller, as ironic as that might be. And it also appears that you can dive underwater in this game. Again, we heard about that through a previous leak, but this is actually a really cool feature. I think my only thing right now, though, is that the human character models are still based on the past few games. Artistically, they're not my favorite character models from the Pokemon series. I wish they would have went into a different direction. But overall, graphically, the game looks fantastic, which I believe is going to propel this game to absurd heights. I think it could end up shattering some records when it launches next year in 2027, and that there was the big twist. Pretty much everybody was expecting Generation 10 for 2026 to celebrate Pokemon's 30th anniversary, but no, apparently that's not the case. Though I'll say this much, I'm not disappointed that it's releasing in 2027, and the reason that I say that is because this is what the Pokemon franchise has needed for a very, very long time. If you're one of those people that complains about the visuals of Pokemon, then you absolutely should not be complaining about the extra time that Game Freak has been afforded with this game. One of the big reasons that some of their past games has not lived up to expectations is because the Pokemon Company hasn't exactly given them enough time to develop their games. So I'm all for them finally getting the time that they actually need, and clearly they're putting that time to good use. Now, they did reveal the 3 new starters, which is Pombon for fire, so it's a Pomeranian, then Brout for grass, it's some kind of grass chicken-like bird thing, and then Gekwa for water, which is a water gecko. Now, personally, I like Gekwa. I like its gecko aesthetics, and just hopefully its evolutions will look good as well. Again, though, the game itself looks very promising, but let me know what you all think, and which starter are you leaning towards from this early trailer? Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.